Erev Tov, and good afternoon to those who are abroad. First of all, Chag Sameach. I think it's important during these very difficult times for us to acknowledge that life goes on, the calendar goes on. My shkedia parachat, or is parachating, if we're going to speak Hebrew English like that, and more than that, for all the challenges that we have, I think it's very important for us to see the ballast and the normalcy that's going on in Israel today. But that is not the topic of the conversation today. I'm very honored to have an opportunity to have this chavruta really with Rav Stav, whom I admire so much. And not that I have any kind of military background, but I know from watching American television shows that they like to ask for a sit rep, which is a situation report. Give us a little sense after this government just marked a month in office. Where do we stand? What's going on, Rav Stav, and what are the most important issues that you're worried about? We'll get to solutions later, but first let's do a little bit of a diagnosis so we all have a kind of common language. Rav.
I think that, as we all know, Tzor is never of direct politics, and therefore I will not go into the issues that naturally a new government wants to accomplish and to implement its promises to those who voted for it, and it's fair and it's more than legitimate. I think that what should concern us as far as a society and as far as Tzor, and I'm not referring, whatever I'm saying about Tzor is not as an organization. As an organization, we will overcome the obstacles, and I'm not sure that we will suffer from this government more than we benefited from previous government. But I'm talking from a Klal Yisrael point of view. I'm talking from the Jewish broad view of what's going on in the Israeli society, and I would like to focus on two issues. A is the feeling that the Israeli society arrived to a point where each one of the members of the Israeli society has to choose between one or two identities. He has to decide whether he wants to be democratic or he wants to be Jewish. Now, I'm not saying that this is the real decision that people are taking, but this is what they feel that is demanded from them or is required from them. And the hundreds of thousands that vote, that demonstrate today in the streets of Tel Aviv and other places, actually decided that for them, the democratic component of their identity or the identity of the state is more important than the Jewish identity of the state or themselves, and vice versa, regarding the second part that the government, the coalition is consisted of. This kind of decision, this kind of choice that people are taking is something that has two big major ramifications. A is the split of the society and the hatred that exists today among the tribes, that for me is reminding me the days after the assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, the hatred to religious people, to traditional people, and to people that belong to the other side. This is something I could remember only from those dark days of weeks and months after the murder of Yitzhak Rabin. But not less important is the hatred to anything that smells Judaism, because it's a kind of a package deal. Once you decided that the religious people represent something, you don't distinguish between religious people and the Jewish heritage. And therefore, their approach to Judaism, everything that smells of Judaism, is getting worse and worse. I could give tens of examples, but I will share with you only one anecdote from each example, from each kind of hatred to to religious people and to Judaism. A few days ago, Yair Sherki, one of the very famous journalists in Channel 12, writes a post in which he shares with the people, with his audience, that a religious guy came to a bookstore in Tel Aviv, wanted to buy a book, and the owner of the bookstore kicked him out, and he said, this store is not selling for religious people. Now, it's true that it's an example in the edge, but you have to understand, these kind of stories happen almost on a daily basis. Not always in a bookstore. Sometimes it will be in a park. Another time it will be in the market, etc., etc. That's one example. I'll give you a second example. I sat with a group of rabbis last Motzei Shabbos, and one of the rabbis' wives, she served as a doctor in Asuta in Ashdod, private hospital in Ashdod. And she shares with the rabbis that a few doctors told her that they have no intention to do a brit milah, to circumcise the babies, once they will have babies, Bezrat Hashem, because they don't want to have anything with Judaism. If that's the way religious people behave to them, they don't want to do anything, to have anything with Judaism. So if I would summarize, it's not what the government has done. The government has done nothing. By the people, B, it's the type of the dialogue which is missing. There is no dialogue today in the Israeli society. There is a dispute. There is a struggle. It's like just two kids that are trying to play with their hands. Who is beating his friend, and who is going to make his friend to give up and to say, I give up. And that's the battle today. No dialogue and no responsibility. The absence of these two leads, A, to a big hatred between the camps, B, to a big hatred to Judaism, not only to people, but to the essence of what makes us the Jewish people of the Jewish nation.
So before we get to solutions, again, I want to go deeper into this very important diagnosis, where you're really saying, first of all, there are these two, there's like team democracy and team Judaism. And it's not only that the tribes are becoming more solidified, but they're not talking to one another. But, you know, it's very strange because there was a poll in the Jerusalem Post on Friday showing that in the religious Zionist community, 50% say Avi Maoz does not represent them. And only 25% say that Avi Maoz does represent them. Similarly, if we go on the Democratic side, we see Bibi Netanyahu saying, wait a minute, what are you talking about that you represent democracy? He said, I had the poll of polls. I won this election. I'm the Democrat. So one of the things that I think we need to see is the degree to which people are so quick to jump on a particular version of Judaism and say, oh, that must be it. Ze kovea, that determines. A particular version of democracy and say, that must be it. That determines. And that's dangerous because it takes these two very complex, often overlapping terms and oversimplifies them and distorts them.
Let me, maybe we should have started with a different way to present the challenge. I don't want to be involved in the political aspect. What Netanyahu is saying is very political, which is absolutely legitimate. I'm talking from the social and from the Jewish point of view and not from the political point of view. I'm not, by the way, I'm not in favor, I'm not supporting, I'm not resisting to the reform, to the judicial reform, I'm not referring to it. I'm taking this just as an example, a test case of what happens in the Israeli society. Let's analyze how is the Israeli society consisted of. What are the tribes of the Israeli society? Again, we are generalizing, we will not be 100% accurate, but we will be 90% accurate, which is good enough in order to give the diagnosis. The Jewish society, I'm not referring to the Arabic society, the Jewish society in Israel is divided to 4 big tribes. The secular, which is mostly Ashkenazi, secular Ashkenazi, the traditional, which is mostly Sephardic, the Dati Leumi people, which are more the religious Zionist, and the 4th tribe is the Haredi tribe, Sephardim and Ashkenaz. Each one of the tribes has a certain part in the national cake. The secular tribe has around 40% of the people. The traditional tribe has around 30% of the people. And the second and the third and fourth, the religious Zionists and the Haredi, each one of them takes about 15%. Together, 100% of the society. If you want to analyze the current political situation only as far as tribes are concerned, we could say easily that the opposition is 90% from the secular tribe and the Arab tribe, which we didn't count in, and the tribes that the coalition is consisted of is the traditional, Dati Leumi, and Haredi tribes. Now, of course, there are a few Dati Leumi that voted for Gantz or voted for the other Dati Leumi that do not identify themselves with Avi Maoz. It's true. All this is true. But basically, if you ask what happened in the last elections, the three traditional religious Haredi tribes are united in one camp, and the secular tribe and the Arabic tribe are in the second camp. That's basically the division today of the Israeli society. Now, for us, by the way, it reminds us the split between the kingdom of Judea and the kingdom of Israel 2,500 years ago. That's exactly the split. By the way, the secular tribe, which is only 40% of the people, basically is paying 90% of the taxes of the Israeli income tax, which means basically that today their feeling is, and I'm not justifying any kind of rebel or anything, any language that speaks about fight and not about dialogue, but basically we have to understand that the secular tribe feels today, they are going to the army, they are paying the taxes, and all the taxes are shifted to religious needs. I'm not saying it's true or not true. I'm just describing the way they feel. But not only that, their lives are going to be controlled by this 50% that do not pay the taxes, or at least not most of the taxes, and do not go to the army, at least 20% to 25% of them. And above all this, now the most important protection that they feel, again, from their point of view, they feel that what represents for them democracy. Of course, Netanyahu could say the opposite, but what represents for them democracy is taken from them. I'm not justifying them, I'm just analyzing. What is their feeling today? Today they feel, and there are ramifications for that feeling. Since they are the ones that carry the economy on their shoulders, and since they are the ones that basically are responsible for a lot of achievements of the Air Force in Israel, of other, the Secret Services, etc., all these amazing organizations that the State of Israel has developed in the last 75 years, basically was done by them, or the majority or primarily was done by them. They feel that somebody else is taking it from them, which is democracy. But today, when they come to the decision, how they analyze the situation, they see it as a battle between Judaism and democracy. Add to that the fact that for the first time in Israel's history, the religious voice is one voice. There is no distinction between the modern Orthodox voice and the Haredi voice. They are competing on the way who will be more extreme, who will come with and offer and propose bills in the Knesset that 10 years ago nobody would dare to put them on the table. All of a sudden they became a part of the table. I could give 20 examples of what's going on in the last couple of weeks in Israel. Every Monday and Thursday, another Knesset member comes with another initiative to put restrictions on the secular society and to add to the needs of the religious society and to shift budgets or other issues. And not only that, but to impose on the secular education system what content will be taught and what will not be taught. Add all this together and you have a big chunk that causes a lot of them to feel that they are not welcome here. And many of them consider even to leave the country. I'm not saying they will do that. They will not do that. But for us, it's enough that they speak in such a language. And more than that, let's say they will all stay in Israel. But what kind of solidarity will we have in Israel in the next decade if 40% of the people feel that they have nothing in common, not in Jewish values, not in moral values, not in other values, with the religious and modern Orthodox society? That's the real threat of our society today.
I certainly agree with your analysis, but there is a gap, right, between this perception of Israel as being so broken down and so polarized, and the reality that, for example, 73% of Israelis lit Hanukkah candles and claimed that they lit all 8 nights, or the degree to which there's been this amazing phenomenon of intermarriage. I love to go to America and say, I love intermarriage. I say this in Orthodox synagogues. They say, what? I say, yes, but more Ashkenazim and Sephardim who intermarry, the more we're going to have a solid center. And I think, of course, this is where Tzohar comes in, that it's very important that we not only give the center a voice, cross wires, make healthy confusion, constructive confusion, but also break down these stereotypes and see that not every Orthodox rabbi believes in the most extreme version of Judaism, and not every so-called Chiloni Democrat wants to have a civil war. And I think you feel like the two extremes are running the conversation, and we in the center are being lost.
First of all, you are right. You're 100% right. I think there is no doubt that the vast majority of the Israeli society wants to be Jewish in their way. I'm not saying they want to be frum, but they want to be observant, but they want to express their Jewish identity in different ways. We see in Tzohar as a fact. There's such a thirst for so many activities that we have started to run in the last couple of years that there is no doubt about what you're saying. That's what causes our concern, because today you have to define yourself. And for many secular people, there is no middle. Either, as the Yoshua says, it's written in the book of Yoshua, Alanu atayim letzarenu. Are you with us or are you with our enemies? There is no middle. Today, somebody asked me to sign a petition that calls to a dialogue between the parties. And I asked my friends, what do they say? My colleagues, and they say, no, don't sign on it. So I said, why? Because today, to say that you ask for a dialogue means that you take a position. Even to say that you are in favor of a dialogue means that you say something against the left, something against the right, and you don't want to be political. So I'm just saying that you are right. Vast majority of the people wants the middle. By the way, they want the middle not only in Jewish issues, but also in all the judicial reforms that are done today. Most probably they want to have a dialogue. Everybody understands that there is a need for a change, but not an extreme change. It has to be done slowly, and after people were discussing the challenges and the ways, the different approaches, how to solve the problems. Everybody understands that there is a need to have a dialogue, but nobody is ready to make this dialogue, not from the right, not from the left. Everybody understands that the Judaism should be more present in Israeli education, but nobody wants coercion. So how do you do it? Etc., etc. And each one of the sides fortifies himself in such fortifications that it's almost impossible to take them out from this position.
So in this polarized environment, what can you do? And what has Tzohar been doing? What have we had any successes? Are we moving the needle in any way? Is there any room for optimism? What should we be focusing on to solve this problem rather than simply watch these two extremes run the conversation? I call this, by the way, the problem of not the silent majority, but the silenced majority. That the people in the middle, the Merkaz, are really being silenced by the hooligans and the extremists on the right and on the left, on the super religious side and the super secular side.
First of all, the silenced voice is so true. I meet with a lot of rabbis recently because of this, and I will share with you a few of the things that we are doing. And many of them tell me that they are afraid to talk. They're afraid to talk about the need to have a dialogue, about the need to raise a voice of religion that is not arrogant and is not ignorant to the pain of the secular tribe. They are afraid to raise this voice because today it's not popular in the religious Zionist camp, at least in its political representation. If you are not talking in a language that insults others and says things in very extreme way, you are not with us. You belong to the other side. It's first of all, the analysm is correct. There is a very famous expression that Rabbi Sachs, bless his memory, used to say, and I love to quote it and to bring redemption to the world. He said, "What's the difference between optimism and hope?" And he said, the main difference between optimism and hope is that optimism actually, you say, well, it will be good, but you have no reason to think so, and you are not doing anything to make it happen. Versus hope and confidence that it's not only that you believe that it will be good, but you are acting in order to make it happen. And that's the difference. So it's not enough to say, well, I'm optimistic. Why? What basis do you have to be optimistic? So I don't have a basis to be optimistic. I know that we don't have the privilege to be desperate. We received from Hashem an amazing gift 75 years ago. We all know that we didn't deserve it. We received this beautiful country as a gift from Hashem that thousands of years our forefathers just could only dream that we will get such a gift from Hashem. We don't have the luxury to have another third destruction of the temple. So we have to struggle. I could share with you that personally, from day one of the elections, I asked myself, what is our duty? What is our mission in these challenging days? I understand that we could not continue like yesterday. I mean, Zohar keeps on doing his great work in marriages and bar mitzvahs and funerals and ethical center. All these amazing things that we are doing, we'll continue to do them. But it's not enough. We started the journey. There is a very famous story about the journey that Rav Kook, as 100 years ago in the kibbutzim, in the moshavot, to start to have dialogues with people, to understand what upsets them, what concerns them. So actually, we are in the middle of such a campaign, of such a journey. We started, so our rabbis, to go into yeshivot as there, midrashot for girls. Bnei Akiva will going to be soon in Ezra and other youth movement and other places, Dati and Chiloni, and to start to have discussions with the people. How do we learn to live together? What is missing today? Could share with you that this week, today is Sunday, on Wednesday, I have a big meeting with a few hundred people that work in one of the best, most important high technology companies in Herzliya. And it's now going to be, I'm going to meet with them personally, but it's going to be broadcasted in the Zoom with a few other companies that showed interest in watching this, about our common Jewish denominator that we should working on. We're not political, and therefore we will not deal with issues that relate to government issues and to Knesset issues. Although I guess each one of us has his own opinion about the judicial reform and other reforms that are going to be taken, but this is not the main mission. The main mission for us is to strengthen the chains of the Israeli society, of the different tribes that feel today that the country does not belong to them. That's from the secular side. And from the Dati Leumi side, people that are concerned that we are losing our way of thinking, the traditional approach of secular people, how to deal with the challenges of modernity, of Jewish state, of relationship with the secular people, that many of our rabbis and many of our maybe political representatives have lost the traditional approach, and we are trying to reach out to them in different ways in order to to change the view on the reality and to change the way they speak out to the students and that they speak out to the society. That's basically the mission that we are focusing today.
So that's obviously, first of all, I have to say, when I hear that rabbis are afraid, as a professor, I get very angry because I always say, you know, I don't have courage, I just have tenure. And if people like professors and rabbis don't stand up and show that we're okay living with complexity and taking a little bit from this side and a little from that side, who will? And I have to say, I'm very disappointed that I haven't heard more rabbis joining you in a call for dialogue and a call for bridge building. So we start with dialogue from the bottom up, but that's a process that, of course, takes a very, very long time. What else is Tzohar doing to help to move the needle, to make change, so that we can really feel like we're going in the right direction?
So as an organization keeps very, very big distance from the political debate. We call for dialogue. Rav Shelo wrote a big article trying to draw the common agreements that the most of the Israeli society could agree upon. We try to be in touch with different politicians from all sides to try to bridge a bit the gap and to try to explain them what are the ramifications of what will happen in Israel if one side will succeed to defeat the other side. So far, without a lot of success, so far, each one of the sides are very, very stubborn. And in this aspect, I'm not optimistic at all. We are focusing on what you call the long run. We meet with, I would say, I don't want to say thousands, but actually it's with thousands of people that belong basically to the secular side in order to try to give them the feeling that they are welcomed here, that nobody wants them to see them outside the country, God forbid, and that we have so much in common, more than what is perceived in the media and more than what we can see in the surface. I agree with you that this will not be helpful in the short term, and to be very honest, in the way people speak today, I don't see. And although we try maybe to join a petition with a few other institutions that called for a dialogue, but on the surface today, it seems that the sides want to come to a clash, and I don't see. It's almost to say that it's inevitable that the clash will happen. What will be the ramifications? I don't know.
Meantime, though, you're continuing your important work with weddings and all kinds of other initiatives that do help build some kind of connection and break the stereotypes, correct?
100%. It's not only that. We are doing much more than we used to do. We continue, we're talking a lot about the law of return. We're working very hard, not only in Israel, but also in the former Soviet Union. And today, because of the refugees crisis, we work very hard with the communities of Vienna, Budapest, Moldova, and Poland, because there are tens of thousands of refugees that escaped there. Just today, I spoke to the rabbi of the community in Vienna that is assisted by our people, and he was very happy to share with me that recently they received 250 new members to their community in Vienna just because of the assistance of our people that help them to prove that they're Jewish. And of course, most of the people come to Israel, do not stay in Vienna. It's one of the missions. Add to that we are working now very hard in order to create different connections with the secular communities, not only as a result of the elections, but we deepen the project and we expand it as a result of the election. We used to make Kabbalat Shabbat on Friday afternoon, 50, 60 communities. We intend now to triple it. We will, B'ezrat Hashem, arrive to more than 200. Just to give you an example of what of the issues that are concerning us, we're preparing ourselves to the project of Purim, reading Megillah together. It used to be that many places used to host it without any hesitation. Tomorrow I have a meeting with somebody that I have to convince him that the fact that he will read the Megillah in his business tower will not make it damage. As a enlightening of what happens, we intend to make a project in Purim under the slogan of Lech Knos et Kol HaYehudim, in which we try to bring together to our events in one place two politicians, that one is against another, in another place to bring two actors, and in another place to bring two journalists that basically belong to the two different struggling camps, in order to show that after all the fight and after all the debates, we still belong to one nation. And if we will not be able to show that to ourselves and to our people, we might find ourselves in a situation where it will be too late after.
By the way, it's very ironic because, of course, in the Knesset, when the cameras are off, that often does happen, right? We recently found out that Merav Michaeli from Labor attended Chaber Knesset Gafni's family wedding. And even though there was gender segregation there, she said, I was going as a guest. It's not for me to impose. And I think this is actually very, very important, because it's very easy for all of us to get despairing and all of us to throw up our hands. But this notion of person-to-person connection and this notion of having the different groups and the different tribes doing things in common, be it Purim or Hanukkah. I think we also should be building to the 75th anniversary of the State of Israel. And that should be a moment where we put aside all our divisions and focus on what you were talking about at the beginning, which is the power of this miracle that we're all fortunate to be living. I think we need to kind of use the Jewish calendar and use the Israeli secular national calendar as opportunities to cross lines and to make what I call constructive confusion and delight in the differences, rather than always focusing on the power of the different tribes.
A, you're 100% right. But B, I want to emphasize, unfortunately, that among the religious Zionist group, the situation is not changing after the cameras are closed off. Matan Kahana could not shake the hands of a few leaders in the religious Zionist movement, because his hand will remain on the air, because they don't want to shake a hand. So in the religious community, unfortunately, the situation is different. And in many aspects, the split between those who I would say support certain positions in religious approach to the State of Israel, and others, the split and the hatred is so deep that it does not change after the cameras shut down.
My friends, I want to invite others to join in the conversation. If they have comments or questions, we're happy to hear them. Text Jeremy. But I have a million questions, because I think these are really such an important thing. So I'm not turning to you out of weakness or out of running out of conversation topics. I'm just trying to be in the true democratic spirit, welcoming and inviting you. So, but I will ask another question in terms of this, which is that
I saw something in the chat. Did I cannot read it, but did you see anything in the chat?
I think that was Jeremy inviting people. But I'm going to focus on, I'm going to allow Jeremy to be the MC for that. And Jeremy, please impose. But I want to take a step back and ask you, if you had the power to write up an update of the Gavos and Meidan covenant, or an Ani Ma'amin that you think could unite us, a vision that could get hundreds of rabbis and from one camp and hundreds of secular leaders from other camps saying, this is what unites us, this is who we are. What would be some of the elements of that? I think we sometimes get so confused and so caught in the day-to-day debates that we don't stop and say, what still is our Ani Ma'amin? What still keeps us together? What is the vision that can link us and move us together? We're very good when it comes to our enemies, thank God, right? And our enemies still, unfortunately, unite us in a very profound way. But I don't want to rely on hatred, and I don't want to rely on terrorism to keep us united. I still think there are certain things that bond us. I look as an American historian at Israeli society and American society, and I still see many more points of contact, many more overlaps, many more things of what Alexis de Tocqueville, the 19th century philosopher, called habits of the heart, Hergarei Halev, I call it the songs of the Israeli street that keep us together. And I think it's important to articulate that. And I'd love to hear what you think are some of the things that keep us ticking, keep us going together.
I think it's a very important question. And the truth is that years before the last elections, I find myself going from one post-high school, pre-army academy, mechinot, what we call, especially secular mechinot, and I talk with them about the need to identify ourselves, to ask ourselves, what is our common identity? What makes us a nation? And the truth is that we have to do a lot of work in this aspect, because for many religious people, the identity, basically, the main component of their identity is their religiosity. The fact that they are observant, the fact that they are, to be Jewish for them means to be religious, to be observant. For the secular people, to be Jewish actually has no meaning. To be Israeli, that has a lot of meaning.
We lost you.
The Israeli identity versus the Jewish identity are competing on the heart of the Israeli society today. And as long as we will not find the formula how to define our common Jewish identity, we will have a problem, because the secular society does not understand why are we so mad at them that in the elementary schools they don't learn Tanakh in a good level, they don't know what Siddur is about, they don't know what Kriyat Shema is about. Why do you care? We are Israelis. Why do we need to know all this? Go and explain them that in every day school, Reform and Conservative in America, or everywhere in the Jewish world, it does not exist that in a Jewish day school, people will not, I'm not talking about davening, I'm talking about knowing, about learning that there is such a thing that is a Chumash, and such a thing that there is a Siddur, etc., etc. So that's from one side. On the other side, the secular tribe, what we call the Israeli society, the secular society does not understand how come in the religious world there is no understanding, or at least a lack of understanding, that there is a meaning of being a nation, that we cannot deal the challenges of modern Israel in 2023 like we dealt in the issues that the shtetl required 100 years ago. And when I'm taking just the example of the train, working on the train on Shabbat. I mean, people do not understand what's going on here. I mean, how do you want to make it happen? I'm not talking now about the halachic solutions, because everybody knows that there are solutions to this issue. But I'm talking just, they don't understand what's going on. Do you understand that you are running a country? Is a country something that means anything for you, or it's only a source to take money for your education? Do you feel responsibility? Do you share solidarity with us? So I think in order to define what is the common denominator that will make us one Jewish nation, each one of the parties requires to learn something from the other, to learn something about what is the role that Judaism plays in our life, and what is the Judaism as a religion and values, and what is the role that the Jewish nation as a nation, what does this play? What role does this play in our life? Before we will arrive to that point, we will not find a common denominator.
It's very interesting because there are bridges. There's the army, right, where we see increasingly, unlike the old days where the kibbutznikim were disproportionately reflected in the officers' corps, now we have many Dati Leumi people reflected in the officers' corps. So there are places where that wire crossing occurs. There's also a fascinating dynamic I'd like to hear you speak about how the religious Zionist community is increasingly being defined by the Haredi community. Right? I think one of the strange things about this government is that there's a clumping from the outside of the two of them together, when I dare say there are certain ideological and theological tensions between the two groups.
again, I don't like to talk about politics, but today I would say that the religious Zionism that is represented politically in the government is not representing the vast majority of religious Zionism. Religious traditional Zionism was a movement of dialogue, of bridges, of attempts to understand the needs of each one of the sides, and never try to impose and to coerce on others their approaches. Today, the way things are represented, I would say that many of the issues that are represented by the religious Zionist party are more extreme than the Haredi have ever dared to try to raise. I would give just two examples that I guess most of our audience are aware. I'm not sure that they are aware of the events, but they're not aware that the Dati Leumi right wing have raised them. Take the issue of the Kotel, the crisis around the what section would the non-Orthodox receive in the Kotel. The Haredim agreed already to the agreement that was signed. The ones that made all the problem belonged to the right wing of the Dati Leumi. The same thing occurred with the law of return. I'm not describing what is my position, but the discussion about the chapter of the grandson, should it be included in the law of return or not? It's initiative of the religious Zionist movement, not of the Haredim. They never dared to raise this issue publicly. So what I'm trying to say that today it's very hard to distinguish ideologically between the two parties, because they are delivering the same way, the same kind of message. We are in power. We will try to take advantage of that. We have no intention to have any kind of dialogue, of discussion. If there is a need to impose, we will impose. This is a kind of behavior that I'm afraid the first one to be damaged afterwards will be the religious people. Because, sometimes this is in power, sometimes the other one is in power. And the results of this way of behavior could be very high. And the first one to suffer will be Haredi and religious people.
By the way, I don't think this is you're being political. I think you're actually being sociological. I think it's quite true in the same way that, as an American historian, I always point out that there's something called the Democratic Party, but it doesn't mean that you have to be a member of the Democratic Party in order to believe in democracy, right? It's just you take these words for your party in order to make it a label. And I think I actually wrote a column about this in the Jerusalem Post, saying that religious Zionism, that the Dati Leumi community is being hijacked by the religious Zionist party. And the religious Zionist party has a very particular ideology that's very far to the right. And again, I referenced this poll earlier in the conversation that shows that there's a gap between most Dati Leumi people and that particular party. But to me, that's a matter of courage, and that's a matter of leadership. And we need to hear more and more voices from within the rabbinate and from within the lay people saying, not in my name, that that we're members more of a different variety. And I think there are obviously, and I think if we also talk about the young people, if we talk about issues about respect and tolerance toward the gay community, if we talk about respect and tolerance toward women who want to take more of her roles, if the entire religious Zionist world is defined only by the extreme right, we're going to have trouble retaining our own within the religious Zionist community, let alone retaining people in Israel itself.
It's true, and therefore it's so hard, for the first time almost in its history, decided that we are not only trying now to advocate for the secular people, but we are working very hard in the religious movement as well. And we start publishing, and we start talking to them in different events, in different communities, in different yeshivot, in order to explain our approach, which is basically the traditional approach of the Dati Leumi people. And I don't want to use the terminology of hijacked it, but basically it's today represented by voices that were never the majority of the voices of the religious Zionist movement.
So I've agreed with almost everything you've said, but I don't mind using words like hijacking, because this isn't the time, as you're making it clear, to be polite. This is a time where we really have to kind of be straightforward and call out those people who are pretending to speak in our name when they're not. And I think that's actually one of the scary things. That's what I was saying earlier about the silenced majority. That and this is not just a problem in Israel. Of course, we know that we're in the age of social media, and in social media, the screechiest, the most aggressive wins. And so we have this back and forth in what I call Twitter dumb, and I spell it D-U-M-B instead of D-O-M, because it brings out the borurut, it brings out the brutality and the ignorance of the democratic conversation, rather than the elegance and the mainstream of the conversation. And I just want to say that at a time when people are so depressed and so despairing, I'm for one very grateful that we have an organization like Tzohar. I'm very grateful that we have your voice and the voice of your colleagues who have a standing that professors like me don't have, to say not in my name, and to say there is a better path, and to say we are going to build bridges. We're going to build bridges to the most Chiloni, alienated couple that wants to run off to Cyprus, but now is going to find a friendly face to be married right here in Eretz Yisrael. And we're going to find within the religious Zionist community voices that say, no, we are complicated. We are one, but we also multiplicity of voices. And I think that importance of understanding that we can have unity without uniformity of opinion is so very important. So I just want to finish by thanking you for all that you do, thanking everyone on the call for all the support they give, and to say just quite personally, there's no bigger gift that my wife and I gave last year, this year, and next year financially than the gift we've given to Tzohar. And we haven't regretted a penny of it, because we know that this really is a fight for the forces of good and the forces of centrism and the forces of Zionism and the forces of Judaism. So thank you, everyone. And let's hope for better times.
Bezrat Hashem, Bezrat Hashem. Shalom, shalom to everyone. Tu B'Shvat Sameach.